My name's Margaret Redlick. I wrote a book called Don't Call It Bollywood, and I run a website called Don't Call It Bollywood because I have no imagination. Now I'm trying a YouTube channel called Don't Call It Bollywood. Part of the reason I wanted to try this is I have a whole bunch of talks I've given at academic conferences, and no one ever listens to them. And I'm hoping I can find more appreciation just putting them out to the world, especially because the titles are so brilliant. I especially love this one, The Pain of Disco, Breaking the Chocolate Hero Mold. What it's really about is the particular kind of Indian film actor who's in a particular kind of film and how they sometimes are able to get past that star persona and move on to a new phase of their career. Before moving on, I have to start by talking about marriage in India. Marriage in India is a little bit different than marriage in some other places in that it's not just about two people coming together, it's very much a coming-of-age ritual. It's the most important thing that marks the line between childhood and adulthood, in a way that's a little bit different in India than in other places. And therefore, all the love stories we see in films aren't just love stories, they're coming-of-age stories. And the journey we're seeing our hero on isn't just young man in love, but young man growing up and truly becoming a man. There's certain set ways these films always go. They start with our hero as a callow youth. He looks adult, he flirts with women, he drinks, he hangs out with his friends, but he isn't really grown up yet. He doesn't have the morality, the intellect, and so on that you would see in a true adult. And then he meets our heroine. There's some sort of impactful meet cute. Often he falls in love at first sight. But it's not real love, it's more like infatuation. Because he doesn't know what real love is yet. That's the point of the film, to show his journey toward realizing that. However, the twin sets him on a new path towards adulthood, which brings in these steps that you have to take to become a man, according to these films. One of the first is violence. In these movies, at some point in the first hour, or in the last hour, or somewhere in the middle, our hero is going to have a big fight scene. It isn't just about putting a fight scene in the film, it's about showing this as part of his adulthood journey. He has learned how to defend himself, how to inflict harm on others, how to protect those he loves from harm. And equally, if not more important, is the scene in which he confronts society, usually represented by either his own father or the heroine's father, declaring that he has been able to find his own inner morality now. He no longer needs to borrow the established morality of those already running things. And then there's making the commitment. Another thing that's unusual about Indian films is it's fairly common to have the wedding scene long before the end of the film. Even if it's not a literal wedding, there will be some moment in which the hero and heroine affirm a lifelong commitment to each other. That's part of our hero's journey towards adulthood, but the point of the film isn't the culmination of the love story, it's the culmination of his journey, and therefore the marriage is just one step along the way. We need to see what happens after the marriage, how he comes into his own in this new role. And then finally we get the happy ending. One thing you've probably already noticed if you're a Shahrukh Khan fan is that I use stills from his very first movie, Deevana, and a much more recent movie, Chennai Express. Because yes, these films are always the same. There's always the same moments that are hit in every film for over 20 years now. And it's not just Shahrukh movies. All kinds of romances hit these exact same points. Not necessarily in the same order. Sometimes the violence is at the beginning, sometimes it's at the end, sometimes the marriage takes place in the first hour, sometimes it doesn't take place until the very end of it. But these same elements tend to be present in every single film. So, what kind of a hero do we need for these movies? There's a very particular type that can become what is called a chocolate hero. The first requirement is they have to be very pretty. Their features have to be regular and pleasing, but also with a certain softness and innocence, so that we can believe them as that callow youth type. They also have to have very cool clothes and cool hair. They have to be aspirational for the audience. Not aspirational as in, oh, I want to take advice from him because he's so wise. But no, aspirational as in, oh, I want to watch this guy on screen because he wears the cool clothes that I would like to buy. And since about 2000, thanks to Hrithik Roshan, they also have to have perfect bodies. There's no real reason for this beyond their bodies are on display on film and it's nice to watch good-looking things. There's some actors who continue in this chocolate hero role for the majority of their careers. Rishi Kapoor, for instance, was launched as a chocolate hero and continued doing that for 20 years and is kind of proud of it. He talks in interviews about how every other actor was running after the action movies and he was still in there doing romances. The problem is, once he aged out, he didn't really have anything else to do, and he started moving on to more character roles. Wonderful character actor, don't get me wrong, but he couldn't really be a star anymore once he was no longer able to be the romantic lead. And then there's other actors who never go through that chocolate boy era. Ajay Devgan, for instance, has always been a man, for lack of a better term. He started as an action hero, he's continued as an action hero. So, how do you transition from being that chocolate boy with a limited career range to a man with a broad variety of role options who can still be a superstar even if he's no longer perfect baby face pretty? Well, the top 3 stars in India have all done it, Shahrukh, Aamir, and Salman Khan. And they all started in the same place. They were launched because they were chocolate heroes. They were something different. In the late 80s, early 90s, Amitabh Bachchan was in his second decade of mega stardom, and people were getting tired of him. He always did action movies. He was looking old. He was looking not good. And people had seen the same thing for 20 years. They wanted something different. And here was something different. Little baby-faced heroes running around falling in love with little baby-faced heroines. You couldn't be more other than the Amitabh Bachchan role. And that's what launched Aamir, Shahrukh, and Salman. They had those baby faces. They could make you believe they were in love. It's what people wanted from them, and it's what they did over and over and over again throughout the early part of their career, cementing their stardom in the minds of the Indian audience through these performances. But they don't do that anymore. So, how did the 3 of them manage to transition from that chocolate boy beginning into adulthood? They all did it in their own way, and to me at least, Shahrukh is the one who did it first. It's harder to notice with him because he continues to play the romantic lead in relationship-based films. But he's had a slight extra bit of maturity for about the past 20-some years. I think starting with Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. In Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, he starts off at callow youth, and then he makes the commitment to the woman he loves. But more than just making a commitment, there's actual evidence of that commitment in his child. Not so coincidentally, this movie came out around the same time that Shahrukh had a child in real life. All of a sudden, how can he be that child growing into a man kind of character if he is himself the father of a child? I'm not saying he never did another romance after this, but he also did performances in Chak De India, Swades, Kalahona Ho, Main Hu Na, a whole variety of films which do not follow that chocolate boy role. And certainly in recent years, he's left it pretty far behind him. And then there's Salman Khan. Salman, really, it was violence that made him into a man, on screen and off. He had his famous series of court cases, many of them revolving around violence, which made it harder and harder to buy him as the innocent chocolate hero type on screen. And then, finally, he had the movie Wanted. He'd done action films before, he'd done a whole variety of films before, but he was still primarily known as the lover hero. Something about Wanted just hit a chord in the Indian audience, and all of a sudden, all they wanted was Salman as the action star. And from then on, that's who he's been. The lover boy image is left in the rear-view mirror, and his primary identity now is action hero. In recent years, of course, he's begun to move into a slightly different phase, action hero who is also boyish in an odd combination of things. But certainly that callow youth who grows up through falling in love, that is no longer what he does. And then there's Amir. Now, Amir became a man through the confronting society route. Again, it was incremental. Throughout the 90s, he made those same love stories like the other actors. For instance, a film called Love, Love, Love. But then, towards the end of the 90s, he started taking more and more serious roles in serious dramas. He moved into producing with Lagan. He made movies like Three Idiots and Tar Zameen Par, which dealt with social ills. And then, finally, he made his television show, Satyam Jayati, which spoke truth to power, as the tagline says. He confronted society with its problems and told it that it had to do better. It was a very manly thing to do. And somehow he transitioned from being the chocolate boy hero into someone that politicians and public figures talk to about serious issues. Now, I know all three of them have transitioned to a new level because all three of them are able to look back and laugh at what they were before. Shahrukh did Darde Disco, making fun of that hard body young man look. Amir did Disco Fighter in Delhi Belly, making fun of the big hair, bright lights kind of songs that made him a star. And Salman has done several movies poking fun at the Prem persona, the sweet innocent boy, which launched him, ranging from Prem Ratan Dan Payo all the way back to Reddy, in which he was a very different kind of a Prem. Finally, I have to end by acknowledging the most famous chocolate hero of them all, Rajesh Khanna, who was truly only at the top of the industry for about 3 years, and yet he cemented his image in the minds of Indian film fans as this fragile boy on the edge of manhood, but not quite there yet. So, that's my talk. If you liked it and want to know more about what I think about Indian film, I encourage you to check out my book and my blog. Thank you.